we were all on the edge of our seats yesterday wondering if Trump was going to get indicted over January 6th. The DOJ at the 11th hour decided to do this. Add new charges to Trump's indictment related to an obstruction, and there was some other things with the document scandal, as well as charging a property manager at Mar-a-Lago. It's the guy who moved some boxes around. Now, remember, the audio recording where Trump talked about holding a classified document, we don't know what the source of that is, but Jack Smith added that one too. Look, there's 2 points of view on this. The first bunch is like this liberal rhino media go-to, that is Trump illegally retained, stored, possessed classified documents that he never declassified. That's what they say. Or they think that he didn't have the authority to declassify them either, which is bizarre enough. I think this is a pretty dumb argument because from where I sit, also, you know me, folks, I held a security clearance for the better part of 10 years, is that Trump has the power to declassify merely by his action. But it's really like arguing with a wall. Liberals say, he's guilty, charge him, gotta go. Well, okay, well, what about Joe Biden and Mike Pence? He had the documents from when he was a senator, Joe Biden did, sitting in his garage next to a Corvette that Hunter Biden was driving around. Oh, that's different. Yeah, it is. We've been through this 1,000 times. Joe Biden did not have the power to declassify those documents. Why is this so hard to understand? Why is there so much debate over basic law and standard? And mind you, by a bunch of people that have never held a security clearance. I'm tired of hearing those people on social media. The entirety of the executive branch works for the President of the United States. This includes anyone involved in the classification process. Every piece of intelligence exists solely for the President. This is a fact. The President has absolute discretion in classification and declassification of documents. Also a fact. I mean, by that standard, yes, theoretically, Joe Biden could announce today every single document in the U.S. is declassified. He could go on TV and start telling all the nation's secrets, who killed Kennedy, little green men, maybe even missile codes. No one can physically stop him from doing that. The only backstop would be to invoke the 25th Amendment. That's where his whole cabinet would deem him incapable of carrying out duties of the office, which, frankly, I don't know why they didn't do it quite some time ago. But the current standard for the classification and declassification of documents is EO 13256. Okay, this is what the Democrats are mainly falling back on. Now, this was issued by Barack Obama in 2009. This is an executive order, and it states the procedure for declassifying documents. They say it must be done either the original classifier, the successor to that classifier's job, or by someone in the line of authority. I don't know, Trump would have been at the top of the authority there. But it must come after a review of the documents is done. It must follow a lengthy process described in that declassification document. Oh, and notably, declassified documents are supposed to be marked declassified. But here's the problem. The executive order is binding on all levels of the executive branch except for the executive, except for the president. The president's not bound by an executive order because the president makes them. He can rescind or make exceptions or his own EOs. Any of those cannot apply to him, previous presidents or whatever. Now, in simpler terms, Trump did not legally have to follow any of these procedures in declassifying documents. This leads to a dilemma, though. Technically, the president could declassify by thinking, as Trump said, because the president is not bound by the procedures. He owns the classification. However, one of the purposes of these procedures is to assure the status of any document is clear. Is that Trump's fault? No. I doubt he's the one carrying around a rubber stamp, putting it on declassified documents. That's someone else's job to keep up with. You would think that if they took documents out of the White House, of a SCIF, and brought them to Mar-a-Lago, maybe they would have stamped them. That's on them, National Archives or staffers. Now, if you meet with the president in the Oval Office, let's say he hands you a document and says, here, this is now declassified. You take it home, you get caught with it. You might be in trouble because is there a declassification mark on it? No, but the act of handing it to you could be considered an act of declassification. This happens actually somewhat regularly, folks. Now, to the contrary, if this was such a big deal, why aren't both Pence and Biden charged for the exact same thing? That's what I keep coming back to. Now, while the established media, though, was hyper-focused on Trump, our current president and his sketchy son could be in a whole lot more trouble. which is exactly why we're hearing so much about additional charges for Trump. It's all cover-up because of what came out yesterday. Remember this, our soon-to-be president, during a presidential debate, openly denied that his son made any money from China. Turns out that's a huge lie. Just look at what Hunter admitted to a judge during yesterday's hearing, that he did in fact receive $664,000 from a Chinese company, CEFC. What else did we learn? Well, it turns out the entire plea deal was so ambiguous, so disjointed, that when the judge asked pointed questions, she was not going to be a rubber stamp on this, by the way. When she asked the prosecution and the defense pointed questions, neither side could agree on the specifics. Weird. Now, usually plea agreements are a single document outlining everything by name that was being included, excluded, or for anything for a potential immunity for this case. And there were two other documents on top of this. One with the tax plea, the second with the gun charge. It was granting immunity for not only this, but everything else indefinitely that could be charged, even remotely related to this, which that's not a thing. This is where it got weird. There was no single place for the judge's signature on the conjoined document granting that immunity. That's the weird thing. Another key point, with no plea deal in place, everyone's talking about, well, are we going to see a trial? For what? In order to have a trial, there has to be an indictment. So even with Hunter dead to rights, why isn't there an indictment? We had a bunch on Trump for nothing. Because the second you indict someone for anything, it stops the clock. Think about this. The statute of limitations has already run out for 2014 and 2015 for tax charges, but 2016, when Joe Biden was still in the Oval Office as the vice president, is still on the table. What happened during that year? Joe Biden was VP and likely used his position to fire a prosecutor investigating the company Hunter Biden was on the board of, Burisma. He admitted this on stage. If they indict him now, any offenses from 2016 could be back on the table. They're simply trying to run out the clock here, folks. And this is how they're doing this. And check this out, though. Weirdly enough, and this is one of the few charges this pertains to, you cannot proceed with a tax indictment without approval from the main DOJ in D.C. Who runs that? Specifically the tax division that you would need that approval from? An assistant attorney general who is appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. A political appointee hand-chosen by Joe Biden's administration. Now do you see why it's so important for them to continue to attack Trump?